Hey everyone, Sophia here. Welcome to Revenge Shift, where the best stories come to life. Hit subscribe for your daily dose. The pasta had gone cold on my plate by the time Daniel walked through the door at midnight. I'd stopped waiting for him to come home at reasonable hours about 6 months ago, but I still made dinner every night. Old habits die hard, even when you know something fundamental has shifted in your marriage. He didn't apologize for being late. He didn't offer an excuse about work. He just stood in the doorway of our dining room, loosening his tie with one hand, and looked at me with something that resembled contempt. "We need to talk," he said. I'd been his wife for 7 years. I taught high school English 10th grade, mostly, and had spent the better part of those 7 years supporting Daniel's career in corporate finance. I'd moved twice for his promotions. I'd hosted dinner parties for his colleagues. I'd learned to smile through conversations about quarterly earnings and market volatility, even though those topics bored me to tears. I'd also learned, over the past 6 months, to recognize when my husband was about to say something that would change everything. "All right," I said quietly, setting down my fork. The silverware made a soft clink against the porcelain. "Let's talk!" Daniel pulled out the chair across from me, but didn't sit. He stood behind it instead, gripping the back with both hands. His knuckles were white. "I've been sleeping with Clara," he said. No preamble, no apology in his tone. Just a flat statement of fact. My boss. We've been together for almost a year. In her office, in her car, at the Riverside Hotel every Tuesday and Thursday afternoon. Multiple times. Dozens of times. I felt something cold settle in my chest, but my hands remained steady on the table. I'd suspected for months. The late nights. The changed passwords. The new cologne. The way he looked through me rather than at me. But hearing it confirmed was different than suspecting it. "I don't regret it," he continued, and that's when I noticed something in his eyes. Not guilt. Not shame. Relief. He was relieved to finally tell me. "She understands me in ways you never have. She's ambitious. She's successful. She operates on my level." "I see," I said softly. My voice sounded calm even to my own ears, distant, like I was reading from a script. "You're a good person, Emma," Daniel said, and somehow that felt more insulting than anything else he'd said. "But you're a high school teacher. You make $42,000 a year reading poetry with teenagers. Clara makes 7 figures. She runs the entire investment division. When we talk about work, she actually understands what I'm saying." I picked up my water glass and took a small sip. The ice had melted, leaving the water lukewarm and slightly bitter. "I want a divorce," he said. "Clara and I are planning to go public with our relationship once the paperwork is filed. Her position protects her from any HR concerns. She's a senior vice president, and I'm technically in a different reporting structure. It's all been very carefully considered." "I'm sure it has been," I said quietly. Daniel's expression shifted then, just slightly. He'd expected tears, begging, maybe even anger. Instead, I set down my fork with deliberate calm and folded my hands on the table. "Thank you for clarifying where things stand," I said. Each word came out measured and even. "I appreciate your honesty. That's it?" he asked. "That's all you have to say? What would you like me to say?" "I don't know, anything. You're acting like I just told you I'll be late for dinner, not that I've been having an affair for a year." I looked at him then really looked at him and realized I was staring at a stranger. The man I'd married at 25 had been kind. Ambitious, yes, but kind. The person standing in my dining room was someone else entirely. "You've made your choice," I said simply. "I'm not going to beg you to reconsider. If Clara makes you happy, then I hope that works out well for both of you." Daniel stared at me for a long moment. Then he shook his head slowly. "I'll sleep in the guest room tonight. Tomorrow I'll start looking for an apartment. That sounds reasonable." He walked away, and I sat alone at the dining table with cold pasta and lukewarm water, listening to his footsteps on the stairs. When I heard the guest room door close, I finally allowed myself to feel the full weight of what had just happened. But I didn't cry. I'd cried 3 months ago when I first suspected the affair. I'd cried when I found a hotel receipt in his jacket pocket. I'd cried when I overheard him on the phone saying, "I miss you too," in a voice he had unused with me in years. I'd done all my crying before tonight. Because 3 months ago, I'd hired Marcus Webb. Marcus Webb was a former FBI agent who now ran a private investigation firm specializing in corporate misconduct and marital infidelity. I found him through a women's forum online, a thread titled, "How to Know for Sure," that had been viewed over 200,000 times. The consultation cost $500. It was worth every penny. "I'm not here to tell you whether to save your marriage or end it," Marcus had said in his small office downtown, his desk neat and organized with military precision. "I'm here to find out the truth. What you do with that truth is entirely up to you." "I just need to know," I'd told him. "One way or another, I need to know." He'd nodded. "Then let's find out." Marcus was thorough. He'd explained his process carefully. Surveillance, digital forensics if I could provide access to shared devices, background checks on anyone Daniel had regular contact with. Everything legal. Everything admissible. "If your husband is having an affair, I'll document it," he'd said. "Time, place, frequency, duration. I'll get photographs. I'll get timestamps. I'll build you a timeline that would hold up in any court in the country." "And if he's not?" I'd asked. "Then you'll have peace of mind. Either way, you'll have certainty." I'd paid his retainer with money from my teaching income. Daniel never looked at our joint account statements. He'd once told me my salary was too insignificant to track, so he never noticed the withdrawal. Marcus had started his surveillance immediately. Within 2 weeks, he'd identified Clara Hartwell as Daniel's affair partner. Within a month, he'd established a pattern. Every Tuesday and Thursday afternoon, Daniel and Clara would leave the office separately and meet at the Riverside Hotel. They checked in under the name Mr. and Mrs. Stevens. They stayed for exactly 2 hours. Then they returned to work as if nothing had happened. Marcus documented everything. 53 separate meetings over 12 weeks. Photographs of them entering the hotel together. Photographs of them in Clara's car in various parking garages. Timestamps for every encounter. Hotel receipts. Security footage from the hotel lobby that Marcus had obtained through a contact who worked there. He'd even managed to recover deleted text messages from our shared phone account messages that made my stomach turn. "Clara, your wife is so trusting. It's almost sweet." "Daniel, she's too stupid to ask complicated questions." "That's perfect." "Clara, do you think she suspects Daniel? Emma?" "No, she's completely oblivious. She thinks I'm working late." "Clara, poor thing. Living in her little world of poetry and teenagers while we build an empire." "Daniel, she'd never be on my level. I don't know what I was thinking when I married her." Reading those messages in Marcus's office, seeing my husband mock me to his mistress, I'd felt something inside me turn to ice. "I'm sorry you had to see that," Marcus had said quietly. "But you needed to know who you're dealing with." "What else did you find?" I'd asked. "Everything. But there's something you should know about Clara Hartwell specifically." He'd pulled up a file on his computer. "Clara is 42. She's been with the firm for 15 years. She's married. Her husband is Richard Hartwell, a cardiologist. They have 2 children, ages 12 and 9. Her father, Theodore Hartwell, sits on the board of directors for your husband's company." "Her father is on the board?" "Yes, and there's more." Marcus had pulled up additional files. "Clara has a pattern. I did some background checking. This isn't her first affair with a married subordinate. I found 2 previous instances, both men who worked under her, both married. One ended in a quiet settlement. The other man left the company entirely. She targets married men, it appears so, and she's careful about it. She uses her position to protect herself, but your husband is different." "How?" "He's the first one to work in a parallel structure rather than directly under her. That makes the power dynamic less clear-cut. But it also makes it harder for her to claim it was entirely consensual given the implicit career implications." I'd absorbed this information slowly. "What do I do with all of this?" "That's up to you," Marcus had said. "But if you want my professional opinion, you document everything. You get a very good lawyer. And you make sure that when this comes out, you're protected. When it comes out. Affairs like this always come out eventually. The question is whether you control the narrative or they do." I thanked Marcus and left his office with a USB drive containing every piece of evidence he'd gathered. That had been 3 weeks ago. I'd spent those 3 weeks preparing quietly, methodically, without Daniel noticing a single thing. I'd opened a separate bank account at a different institution and slowly transferred my paychecks there. I'd made copies of every financial document in our house. I documented every asset we owned, the house, the cars, Daniel's stock options, his 401k, everything. I'd also contacted Patricia Reeves, the best divorce attorney in the city. Your husband is going to be very surprised, Patricia had said after reviewing Marcus's evidence. This is substantial. The affair creates grounds for fault-based divorce in this state, which affects asset division. And given his income level and the duration of your marriage, you're entitled to significant compensation. I don't want to drag this out, I'd told her. I just want it to be fair. Fair, in this case, means you walk away with half of everything acquired during your marriage. His partnership bonus from last year, marital property, his stock options, marital property, the house equity, half yours. We'll also pursue spousal support given the income disparity. How much are we talking about? Patricia had smiled. Given his salary and the evidence of fault, you're looking at a settlement in the range of $800,000 to $1.2 million. Plus the house or half its equity if you prefer liquidity. I'd felt dizzy. That much? You supported his career for 7 years. You moved for his jobs. You sacrificed your own advancement opportunities. And he betrayed you with his boss while mocking you to her. Yes, that much. So I'd prepared. I'd gathered evidence. I'd organized documents. I'd created a roadmap for my new life. And then I'd waited for Daniel to confess. Because I'd known he would. Marcus had told me about the pattern. The guilt eventually becomes too heavy. Or the affair partner pushes for acknowledgement. Or the cheater simply wants the relief of honesty. He'll tell you, Marcus had said. And when he does, don't react. Stay calm. Give him nothing to use against you later. Just listen, thank him for his honesty, and let him think you're too shocked to fight back. That's exactly what I'd done. The next morning, Daniel came downstairs with a suitcase. I was sitting at the kitchen table grading essays, my red pen moving across the pages with practiced efficiency. I'm going to stay at a hotel for a few days while I look for an apartment, he said. We can work out the details of the divorce through lawyers. I'll be fair about the assets. Thank you, I said, without looking up from the essay I was reading. Emma. He paused at the doorway. I really did love you once, I hope you know that. I do, I said quietly. Have a good day, Daniel. After he left, I finished grading the essays. Then I sent 3 emails. The first was to Patricia Reeves. He's moved out. Please proceed with filing. The second was to Marcus Webb. Thank you for everything. Please prepare the full report. The third was to Theodore Hartwell, Clara's father on the board of directors. I'd found his personal email through some careful research. The subject line read, regarding your daughter and my husband. The email was brief and professional. Mr. Hartwell, my name is Emma Cross. My husband, Daniel Cross, is a senior analyst at your company. I'm writing to inform you that I have substantial documented evidence that your daughter, Clara Hartwell, has been engaged in a year-long affair with my husband. I'm not writing this out of spite. I'm writing because I believe you should know what your daughter has been doing before this becomes a much more public matter. I have evidence of 53 documented meetings, including photographs, timestamps, hotel records, and recovered communications. This is not the first time your daughter has engaged in affairs with married subordinates at the firm. I have documentation of at least 2 prior instances. I am filing for divorce. That is a private matter between my husband and myself. However, I felt you deserve to know the truth about your daughter's conduct before it potentially impacts your company's reputation. Respectfully, Emma Cross. I attached a PDF containing 10 pages of Marcus's evidence, enough to prove I wasn't lying. Not so much that it felt gratuitous. Then I hit send. The next 2 weeks were remarkably quiet. Daniel texted occasionally about logistics, when he could pick up more of his things, whether I wanted to keep the car or split the insurance payment. I responded politely and briefly to each message. I didn't tell him I'd filed for divorce. I didn't tell him about the evidence. I didn't tell him that Patricia had served the papers to his office on a Tuesday afternoon, right before his usual meeting time with Clara. I also didn't tell him that Theodore Hartwell had responded to my email within 3 hours. Theodore Hartwell, Mrs. Cross. Thank you for bringing this to my attention. I'm deeply disappointed and disturbed by what you've shared. I will be addressing this matter with my daughter immediately and with the appropriate parties at the firm. You have my sincere apologies for the pain this situation has caused you. You handled this with remarkable grace and discretion. If you need any support during your divorce proceedings, please don't hesitate to reach out. Theodore Hartwell, I didn't need his support, but I appreciated the acknowledgement. The first sign that things were unraveling for Daniel came exactly 14 days after he'd moved out. My phone rang 17 times in one afternoon, all from Daniel. I didn't answer. Then the text started. We need to talk. Now. Emma, answer your phone. What the hell did you do? Calm. I was in the middle of teaching Romeo and Juliet to my 4th period class when my phone buzzed for the 18th time. One of my students noticed and smirked. Someone really wants to talk to you, Ms. Cross. Sometimes the people who want to talk to us most urgently are the people we least need to hear from, I said, turning off my phone and putting it in my desk drawer. Now let's talk about the role of family loyalty in Act 3. After school, I finally listened to Daniel's voicemails. The first one was angry. Emma, you need to call me immediately. This isn't funny. Whatever you think you're doing, stop it right now. The second was panicked. They served me divorce papers at work. At work, Emma. In front of my entire team. Do you have any idea how humiliating that was? And Clara got called into an emergency meeting with Theodore Hartwell and the head of HR. What did you do? The third was desperate. Please just call me back. We can work this out. I made a mistake. I know I hurt you. But you don't understand what you've done. Clara could lose her job. I could lose my partnership track. Please, Emma, call me. I deleted all the voicemails and called Patricia instead. How are you holding up? She asked. I'm fine. Daniel's calling nonstop. He sounds panicked. Good. That means he's realized you have evidence. His attorney will be reaching out to me soon if they haven't already. Be prepared for him to either beg you to drop everything or try to paint you as vindictive. I'm not vindictive. I'm just done. I know. And the evidence supports that. You gave him months to come clean. You supported his career for years. You did nothing wrong here. What happens now? Now we negotiate. But Emma, I need you to be prepared for something. What? Theodore Hartwell has apparently launched an internal investigation into Clara's conduct. If what you documented is true, and I have no reason to doubt you, Clara Hartwell is going to face serious professional consequences. Her father is protecting the company, not his daughter. She should face consequences, I said quietly. She's done this before. She targets married men who work for her. That's predatory. I agree. But when this becomes more public, and it will, Daniel is going to blame you for everything. Let him, I said. I didn't make him cheat. I didn't make him mock me to his mistress. I didn't make him throw away our marriage for someone who targets vulnerable, married men. He did all of that himself. Good, Patricia said. Remember that when he shows up begging... Daniel showed up 3 days later. I was in my apartment. I'd moved out of the house we'd shared and into a small one-bedroom, closer to the school, when someone knocked on my door at 9 p.m. I looked through the peephole and saw Daniel standing in the hallway. He looked terrible. His tie was crooked. His suit jacket was wrinkled. He had dark circles under his eyes and had clearly lost weight. But it was his expression that struck me most. He looked haunted. Emma, please, he said through the door. I know you're in there. Please just talk to me for 5 minutes. Against my better judgment, I opened the door. I didn't invite him in. I just stood in the doorway with my arms crossed. What do you want, Daniel? I want to know what you did. His voice cracked. What did you send to Theodore Hartwell? What evidence do you have? The truth, I said simply. I sent him the truth about what you and his daughter were doing. Do you have any idea what you've done? He ran his hand through his hair. Clara's been suspended. They're doing a full investigation. Her father is furious. She could be fired. Her husband, Richard, he called me. He's filing for divorce. Emma, you destroyed her life. No, I said calmly. Clara destroyed her own life. And so did you. I made a mistake. I know I did. But this is vindictive. This is cruel. I documented your year-long affair, I said. I hired a private investigator who found 53 separate meetings at hotels and in parking garages. I have photographs. I have text messages where you called me stupid and said I'd never be on your level. I have evidence that Clara has done this before with at least 2 other married men. None of that is vindictive. It's just true. Daniel stared at me. When did you become this person? I've always been this person. You just never bothered to look closely enough to notice. The partnership review is in 6 weeks, he said desperately. The managing partners are asking questions. They're suggesting that a pending divorce with conduct issues might reflect poorly on my decision-making. Emma, if I don't make partner, everything I've worked for is gone. And there it was, the real reason he'd come. He wasn't here to apologize. He wasn't here because he loved me or regretted what he'd done. He was here because the professional consequences were catching up with him, and he thought I could make them go away. You should leave, I said quietly. Emma, you told me I'd never be on your level. You mocked me for being a teacher. You said I was too stupid to ask complicated questions. You threw away 7 years of marriage for someone who targets vulnerable men. And now you're here asking me to save your career? I didn't mean those things. I was just Clara and we got caught up in something and I said things I didn't mean. You meant them, I said. You meant every word. And you know what? You were right about one thing. I'll never be on your level. Because my level doesn't include betraying the people who love me. I closed the door. Daniel stood in the hallway for another minute, maybe 2. Then I heard his footsteps walking away. I sat down on my couch and finally allowed myself to feel the full weight of everything. Not sadness. Not grief. Just a profound sense of relief that I'd never have to pretend anymore. The full story came out over the next 3 weeks. Marcus Webb had prepared a comprehensive report of his investigation, and Patricia had used it strategically in our divorce negotiations. Daniel's attorney had initially tried to argue for a 50-50 split with minimal spousal support, claiming that Daniel's career advancement was his own achievement and not marital property. Patricia had responded by pointing out that I'd moved twice for Daniel's career, sacrificed my own advancement opportunities, and supported him through business school while working 2 jobs. Then she'd mentioned the affair evidence and the text messages where Daniel had mocked me. Daniel's attorney had gotten very quiet. Your client called my client stupid, Patricia had said in their first negotiation meeting. He said she'd never be on his level. He mocked her profession while she was supporting his career advancement. And he did all of this while engaged in a systematic year-long affair with his married boss. If we go to court, every one of those text messages becomes public record. So let's talk about what a fair settlement actually looks like. They'd settled quickly after that. The divorce settlement included $400,000 cash payment from Daniel's stock options and savings, $250,000 from his partnership bonus that he'd received 9 months earlier, half the equity from our house, $180,000 my car. Fully paid off 3 years of spousal support at $3,000 per month. All of my personal property and retirement accounts total value, approximately $1.1 million, plus the ongoing support. I'd walked away from my marriage financially secure for the first time in my adult life. But the money wasn't the most satisfying part. Clara Hartwell had been fired. The investigation Theodore Hartwell had launched reluctantly, I'd learned later, but necessarily had uncovered not just her affair with Daniel, but the 2 previous affairs with married subordinates. It had also revealed that she'd used company resources to facilitate the affairs, corporate credit cards for hotel rooms, company time for personal meetings, and workplace access for personal encounters. The board of directors had voted unanimously to terminate her employment for cause. For cause meant no severance, no benefits, no recommendation letters. Just a quiet escorted exit from the building and a professional reputation in ruins. Her husband Richard had filed for divorce the same week. I'd received a phone call from him 2 days after the news broke. Mrs. Cross, he'd said when I answered. I'm Richard Hartwell. I think you know who I am. I do, I'd said carefully. I'm not angry with you, he said immediately. I want you to know that first. You're as much a victim in this as I am. More! Actually, your husband pursued my wife. Mine pursued him. I'm sorry you're going through this. I'm sorry we both are. He paused. I called because I want you to know something. Clara has done this before. Not just the 2 times your investigator found. There were others. I found evidence going back almost 10 years. Different married men, always subordinates or near subordinates. Always men she could control professionally. That's predatory, I said quietly. Yes, it is. And I've been making excuses for her for too long. But this time I have documentation. Text messages, emails, evidence that she's been systematically targeting married men at her company. I'm using it all in my divorce. And I wanted you to know that if you need anything for your case, I'll support you. Thank you, I said. That means more than you know. My children are 12 and 9, Richard said, his voice breaking slightly. They're going to grow up knowing their mother destroyed multiple families for her own ego. I can't fix that. But I can make sure she doesn't do it to anyone else. After we hung up, I sat in my small apartment and thought about the cascade of consequences that had followed from one decision. Hiring Marcus Webb. If I hadn't hired him, I would never have known the extent of the affair. I would never have had evidence. I would never have been able to protect myself in the divorce. And Clara would have moved on to her next victim without consequence. But I had hired him. And now everything was different. 6 weeks after Daniel moved out, I ran into him at a coffee shop downtown. I almost didn't recognize him. He'd lost at least 15 pounds. His suit was hanging loose on his frame. His face was gaunt, and he had the look of someone who hadn't slept properly in weeks. He was standing at the counter, staring at the menu board like he couldn't make sense of it. He turned and saw me before I could leave. Emma, he said. Just my name, nothing else. Daniel, I replied neutrally. Can we talk just for a minute? I should have said no. But something in his expression made me hesitate. He looked broken in a way I'd never seen before. 1 minute, I said. We sat at a small table near the window. Daniel wrapped his hands around a coffee cup he'd ordered but hadn't drunk. His hands were shaking slightly. I didn't make partner, he said quietly. The review committee decided that the personal conduct issues reflected poor judgment. They've put me on a performance improvement plan instead. 1 year to prove I can maintain professional standards. After that, they'll reconsider. I'm sorry, I said, and I meant it. Not because I felt guilty, I didn't, but because I could see how completely his life had fallen apart. Clara's gone, fired. Her father won't speak to her. Her husband filed for divorce. She's living with her sister in Connecticut. I heard. Everyone at work knows what happened. They don't say anything directly, but I see how they look at me. Like I'm the guy who threw away his marriage and his partnership for an affair with the boss who got fired. You are that guy, I said gently. Daniel flinched. I know I am. And I don't know how to fix it. You can't fix it, I said. You can only learn from it. I keep thinking about that night, when I told you about the affair. You just set down your fork and thanked me for clarifying where things stood. You didn't cry. You didn't yell. You just accepted it. How did you do that? I thought about Marcus Webb's evidence sitting on my desk, about Patricia Reeves's strategic planning, about the 3 months I'd spent preparing for that exact moment. Because I already knew, I said simply. I'd known for months. I'd prepared for it. And when you finally told me the truth, I'd already grieved the marriage we had and accepted the reality of what we'd become. Daniel stared at me. You knew? For months? I hired a private investigator in February. He documented everything, the hotels, the text messages, the pattern of Clara's previous affairs. All of it. February. That was 3 months before you confessed. Yes, you spent 3 months just preparing? I spent 3 months protecting myself, I corrected. Because I knew that when the truth came out, you would try to minimize it or make me feel like I was overreacting. So I made sure I had evidence that couldn't be disputed. Daniel looked down at his untouched coffee. I told Clara you were too stupid to notice. I said that. Out loud, multiple times. I know. I read the text messages. You weren't stupid. You were always smarter than me. I just couldn't see it because I was too busy feeling superior. That's true, I said. Not cruelly, just honestly. Do you hate me? He asked quietly. I thought about that question. Did I hate Daniel? Once I might have. In those first weeks after finding the hotel receipt, after discovering the text messages, after realizing that my husband held me in contempt, yes, I'd hated him then. But now? No, I said finally. I don't hate you. I just don't think about you very much anymore. And that, I realized, was the truth. Daniel had taken up so much space in my life for 7 years. He'd been the center of every decision, every plan, every compromise, and now he was just someone I used to know. Someone who'd hurt me badly, but who no longer had any power over my life. I'm sorry, Daniel said, for everything. For the affair, for the things I said, for thinking you'd just accept being treated that way. I'm genuinely sorry. I believe you, I said. But sorry doesn't fix anything. It just means you understand now what you did then. Is there any chance at all, that we could try again? Start over? I looked at him carefully. He seemed sincere. But I also knew that sincerity born from consequences wasn't the same as sincerity born from genuine remorse. No, I said gently. There isn't. You didn't want to start over. You wanted to end things. You got what you wanted. You're just unhappy with how it turned out. Daniel nodded slowly. You're right. I know you're right. I finished my coffee and stood up. I hope things get better for you, Daniel. I really do. But they're going to get better away from me. Emma, he said as I turned to leave. For what it's worth, you did nothing wrong. Everything that happened, all of it, that was on me and Clara. You were always exactly what you said you were. I just stopped valuing it. Thank you for saying that, I said. Goodbye, Daniel. I walked out of the coffee shop and into the bright afternoon sunshine. My phone buzzed with a text from my friend Sarah. Still on for dinner tonight? I smiled and texted back. Absolutely. Looking forward to it. 3 months after the divorce was finalized, I received an unexpected email. It was from Margaret Torres, the head of HR at Daniel's company. The subject line read, "Confidential matter, request for meeting." I called Patricia immediately. Should I respond to this? What does the email say? I read it aloud. Dear Mrs. Cross, I hope this email finds you well. I am writing regarding a confidential matter that has arisen at our firm. We have become aware of a pattern of conduct by a former employee that may have impacted other individuals beyond the documented cases. Would you be willing to meet with me to discuss your experience? This is entirely voluntary, and you are welcome to bring legal counsel. Please let me know if you would be comfortable with such a meeting. Interesting, Patricia said. I think you should meet with her. This sounds like they're building a more comprehensive case, possibly to protect themselves from future liability. I'll come with you. The meeting took place the following week in a conference room at the firm's downtown headquarters. Margaret Torres was a tall woman in her 50s with steel gray hair and sharp eyes. She shook my hand firmly. Thank you for coming, Mrs. Cross. I know this must be difficult. It's Ms. Cross now, I said. And I'm all right. What did you want to discuss? Margaret opened a folder on the table. After Clara Hartwell's termination, we conducted a comprehensive review of her tenure with the firm. What we found was deeply troubling. Over 15 years, we've identified 7 separate instances where Ms. Hartwell engaged in affairs with married subordinates or near subordinates. 7? I felt sick. 7 men? Yes, your husband was the most recent. But there were 6 others before him. In 3 cases, the affairs led to divorces. In 2 cases, the men left the company. In 1 case, the man's wife never found out, and he's still working here. In another, the affair ended quietly with no apparent consequences. Why are you telling me this? Because you're the only spouse who fought back, Margaret said quietly. You're the only one who documented everything, who hired a private investigator, who brought evidence to the board. The other spouses either didn't know or didn't have proof. You did. And because of you, we finally had grounds to terminate Miss Hartwell and prevent her from doing this to anyone else. I absorbed this slowly. I didn't do it to help your company. I did it to protect myself. I understand that. But the effect is the same. Ms. Hartwell's pattern of predatory behavior has ended. And I wanted you to know that your actions may have saved other families from going through what you went through. Patricia leaned forward. Is there a reason you're telling Ms. Cross this now? Margaret hesitated. We're concerned about potential liability. If other victims come forward and claim that the company knew or should have known about Ms. Hartwell's pattern, we could face significant legal exposure. Your evidence suggests a systematic pattern that someone should have noticed. We're trying to determine how to address that responsibly. You want to know if I'm planning to sue, I said. We want to know if there's anything we can do to make this right. Margaret corrected. For you specifically, I thought about that. The divorce settlement had been generous. I was financially stable. My teaching career was completely unaffected. Daniel was dealing with his own consequences. Clara had been fired. I don't want anything from you, I said finally. But I do want you to answer a question. Why did it take 7 affairs over 15 years before anyone stopped Clara Hartwell? Margaret's expression tightened. Because she was very good at her job. She brought in significant revenue. She made the firm money. And the men she targeted either didn't complain or left quietly. No one wanted to rock the boat. So you protected your revenue stream instead of protecting families. Yes, Margaret said quietly. We did. And that was wrong. I'm not making excuses. I'm telling you that we failed. The company failed. I failed. And I'm trying to make sure it doesn't happen again. How? I asked. We've implemented new policies. Mandatory reporting of any romantic or sexual relationship between employees with any power differential. Third-party reporting systems for concerns about harassment or predatory behavior. Regular training. And most importantly, a clear message from the board that no amount of revenue justifies protecting someone who preys on vulnerable employees or their families. I looked at Patricia. She shrugged slightly, indicating the decision was mine. All right, I said. I don't want money from you, but I want you to do something else. What's that? I want you to contact the other 6 spouses. The ones whose husbands had affairs with Clara Hartwell. Tell them the truth about what happened. Give them the evidence you found. Let them decide what to do with that information. Some of them might not know. Others might know but not have proof. They deserve to know the truth. Margaret nodded slowly. I'll need to consult with our legal team, but I think we can do that carefully and responsibly. Would you be willing to speak with any of them if they want to talk to someone who's been through this? Yes, I said. If they want to talk, I'll talk. We ended the meeting shortly after that. As Patricia and I walked out of the building, she turned to me. That was generous of you. Offering to talk to the other spouses. It's not generous. It's necessary. I spent 3 months feeling alone and scared before I hired Marcus Webb. If someone had told me I wasn't crazy, that there was evidence that I could fight back, that would have meant everything. You're remarkable, you know that? I smiled. I'm just a high school English teacher who got tired of being underestimated. 6 months after the divorce, I started something new. I'd been thinking about Margaret Torres's question, what could the company do to make things right? And I'd realized that what had saved me wasn't just the evidence or the lawyers or the settlement. It was knowing that I had options. It was having someone like Marcus Webb tell me the truth. It was having Patricia Reeves fight for me. Not everyone had access to those resources. So I used part of my settlement money to establish a foundation, the Clear-Eyed Foundation for Financial Independence. The name came from something my mother had told me years ago. The clearest eyes are the ones that don't flinch from uncomfortable truths. The foundation's mission was simple: provide resources for people going through divorce or separation who couldn't afford private investigators, attorneys, or financial advisors. We partnered with professionals who volunteered their time. We created educational materials about protecting yourself financially. We offered support groups for people navigating betrayal. The foundation wasn't about revenge. It was about empowerment. Within 3 months, we'd helped 12 people document affairs, secure evidence, and negotiate fair settlements. Within 6 months, that number had grown to 37. I didn't run the foundation alone. Richard Hartwell, Clara's ex-husband, had reached out after hearing about the organization and offered to help. He understood the devastation of betrayal. He also understood the importance of evidence and preparation. My children asked me why I didn't see it sooner. Richard told me during one of our planning meetings. Why I didn't notice the pattern. And I tell them the truth. I trusted someone who didn't deserve trust. But the lesson isn't to never trust anyone. The lesson is to trust yourself enough to ask questions when something feels wrong. That's exactly right, I said. Trust isn't the same as willful blindness. The foundation grew steadily. We received donations from people who'd been through similar situations. We received volunteer offers from attorneys, investigators, and financial advisors who wanted to help. We received thank you notes from people who'd used our resources to escape bad situations. My favorite note came from a woman named Jennifer who suspected her husband was cheating but had no proof. She'd used our resources to hire a private investigator, document the affair, and negotiate a settlement that gave her full custody of their children and enough money to finish her nursing degree. You showed me that I didn't have to accept being treated poorly, she wrote. You showed me that I could fight back with facts instead of emotions. You saved my life. Thank you. I put that note on my refrigerator as a reminder of why the work mattered. 1 year after my divorce was finalized, I received a call from an unknown number. Is this Emma Cross? A woman's voice asked. Yes, who's calling? My name is Vanessa Morrison. Margaret Torres from your ex-husband's company gave me your number. I hope you don't mind. Not at all, I said, sitting down on my couch. How can I help you? My husband worked at the same firm as your ex-husband, and he had an affair with Clara Hartwell 5 years ago. I didn't know about it at the time. I suspected, but I had no proof. Margaret told me about the investigation. She told me you documented everything. And I just wanted to talk to someone who understands. I understand, I said gently. And I'm glad you called. How are you doing? I'm angry, Vanessa said, and I could hear tears in her voice. I'm so angry that I spent 5 years not knowing the truth, that I blamed myself for my marriage falling apart, that I thought there was something wrong with me. And now I find out it was her. She targeted him. She pursued him. And I never knew. No, it wasn't your fault, I said firmly. None of it was your fault. But I should have seen. You trusted your husband. That's not a failing. That's what you're supposed to do in a marriage. He's the one who failed. And Clara Hartwell is the one who systematically targeted married men. Neither of those things are on you. Vanessa was quiet for a moment. How did you get through it? By focusing on what I could control, I said. I couldn't control what my ex-husband did. I couldn't control Clara's pattern of behavior. But I could control how I responded. I could gather evidence. I could protect myself financially. I could decide that I deserved better than someone who held me in contempt. Did you ever feel like giving up? Every single day for about 3 months. But then I remembered something one of my students told me. She said, Ms. Cross, you always tell us that the hardest choices are the ones that define our character. So I decided that this was my hard choice. I could either accept being diminished or I could fight for my own worth. What happened to your ex-husband? Vanessa asked. If you don't mind me asking, he didn't make partner. He's still at the firm, but he's on a performance improvement plan. His social circle knows what happened. His professional reputation is damaged. And he has to live with the fact that he threw away everything for someone who used him. Does that make you feel better? Knowing he's struggling? I thought about that question carefully. No, it doesn't make me feel better. But it does make me feel validated. Like the universe recognized that what he did was wrong and responded accordingly. I don't take pleasure in his suffering. But I do take comfort in knowing that actions have consequences. I wish I'd done what you did, Vanessa said quietly. I wish I'd fought back. It's not too late, I said. You can still fight for yourself now. You can still demand truth and accountability. It might look different than it would have 5 years ago, but you can still reclaim your narrative. How? By deciding that you deserved better then and you deserve better now. By telling your story if you want to. By helping other people avoid what happened to you. By building a life that reflects your worth instead of his failure. We talked for another hour. I told Vanessa about the foundation. I told her about the resources we offered. I told her about the other spouses who'd been through similar experiences. And I listened while she shared her story, the years of suspicion, the gaslighting, the slow erosion of her self-confidence, the relief of finally knowing the truth, even though it came 5 years too late. Thank you, she said when we finally ended the call. Thank you for not making me feel crazy or weak. You're neither of those things, I said. You're a survivor. And you're stronger than you know. After we hung up, I sat on my couch in my small apartment and thought about the year that had passed. I thought about Daniel's confession at midnight. I thought about Marcus Webb's evidence and Patricia Reeves's strategic planning. I thought about Theodore Hartwell's email and Margaret Torres's investigation. I thought about Richard Hartwell's partnership and the foundation we'd built together. I thought about all the choices I'd made, the decision to hire a private investigator, the decision to stay calm when Daniel confessed, the decision to send evidence to the board, the decision to negotiate firmly for my worth, the decision to build something meaningful from the wreckage of my marriage. And I realized something important. I was happier now than I'd been in years. Not because my ex-husband was struggling. Not because Clara Hartwell had been fired. Not even because I'd walked away from the divorce with significant financial security. I was happier because I'd proven to myself that I could face an impossible situation and emerge intact. I'd proven that I was stronger, smarter, and more resourceful than Daniel had ever given me credit for. I'd proven that being underestimated was a gift because it meant no one saw me coming. My phone buzzed with a text from Richard, board meeting for the foundation next week. We've received 3 more grant applications. This is really working. I smiled and texted back, "Excellent, see you then." Then I returned to grading essays from my 10th grade English class. The unit was on the Odyssey, the journey of a clever protagonist who faces impossible odds and finds a way home through strategic thinking rather than brute force. One student had written, "Odysseus won because everyone underestimated him. They thought he was weak or defeated, so they stopped watching carefully. That's when he made his move." I wrote in the margin, "Excellent observation. Never underestimate the power of patience and planning." Then I gave the essay an A and moved on to the next one. 2 years after my divorce, I ran into Clara Hartwell. I was at a professional development conference for teachers, a 2-day event about innovative curriculum design, when I saw her in the hotel lobby. She was checking in at the front desk, looking significantly older and more worn than the last photos I'd seen of her. She didn't notice me at first. I could have walked away. Part of me wanted to. But another part of me, the part that had spent 3 months carefully gathering evidence, the part that had calmly thanked my husband for his honesty while planning systematic revenge, the part that had built a foundation to help other victims, that part wanted to face her directly. I walked over and stood a few feet away until she turned and saw me. The recognition was instant. Clara's face went pale. "Emma." "Clara," I said neutrally. "I didn't know you'd be here. I'm a teacher." "This is a teaching conference. Why are you here?" Clara's expression tightened. "I'm trying to transition into education. Corporate training, specifically. I have an interview with a consulting firm tomorrow." "I see." We stood in awkward silence for a moment. Then Clara said, "I know you probably don't want to hear this, but I'm sorry. For everything, for what I did to your marriage. For the way I talked about you. For everything." I looked at her carefully. She seemed sincere. But she also seemed desperate, like someone who'd lost everything and was trying to rebuild from rubble. "Did you apologize to the other 6 women whose marriages you destroyed?" I asked quietly. Clara flinched. "You know about them. I know about all of them." Margaret Torres told me. 7 affairs over 15 years. 7 married men. 7 families torn apart. Did you apologize to any of them? I tried. Most wouldn't talk to me. Can you blame them? No. Clara looked down at her hands. No, I can't. What I did was predatory. It was cruel. And I can't undo any of it. Why did you do it? I asked. The question had been sitting in the back of my mind for 2 years. You were successful. You had a husband and children. You had everything. Why did you systematically target married men? Clara was quiet for a long moment, because I could. Because it made me feel powerful. Because when a married man chose me over his wife, it validated something broken inside me that needed constant validation. That's honest, I said. It's the truth. And the truth is that I was broken long before I started any of those affairs. I was insecure and competitive and cruel. I hurt people because I was hurting. That's not an excuse. It's just the truth. How are your children? I asked. Clara's eyes filled with tears. They're with their father. I see them every other weekend. They're angry with me, disappointed. They don't understand why I did what I did. And I can't explain it in a way that makes sense to them. And the job interview tomorrow? It's my 5th interview in 2 years. The others all ended when they ran background checks and found out why I was fired. This firm doesn't know yet. I don't know if they'll care. But I need to work. I need to rebuild something. I thought about the years Clara had spent systematically destroying marriages while building her own career. I thought about the text messages where she'd mocked me. I thought about the 7 other women who'd been through what I'd been through. And I thought about the foundation Richard and I had built, about the people we'd helped, about the work we were doing to prevent others from experiencing what we'd experienced.